Hello everybody, I'm Dastur, Adam Daniels of the Dakhma Angra Mainyu. We're going to continue to move forward with the understanding of the Yasna ritual series. The first video was Moby Kelsey explaining about the mensis and why we use mensis in worship. So we need to establish exactly what the Yasna is. Yasna means sacrifice ritual. Yasna originally comes from the Vedic version of Yajna. The main difference between the Yajna and the Yasna is the Yajna, the Vedic Hindu ritual, is a fire ritual that is sacrificing any and everything to the fire, which is Agni. And Agni is the communicator and takes those things to the divinities that they're sacrificing to. And they would use Gairantri mantras, which are specifically heavenly mantras, higher plane mantras, planetary mantras, to move those things on the higher realms from the fire instead of the lokas, the realms, planes based on earth. The shift when we get to the Yasna is that they are specifically trying to sacrifice and clean the water, or they're trying to purify water. Everything in the Yasna is using purified water to clean things. They're trying to purify the underground water. Everything is evolved around purifying water, because within the mythology of Zoroastrianism, Anahita was the feminine water spirit and wild beast. She was the one that Zervan sacrificed to Ahriman so that Ahriman could kiss her on the forehead and create Jahi. So therefore, one of the main reasons for the Zoroastrian version of the Yasna is the purification of water. It's also to hold up order within the cosmos. And many folks don't quite understand what all this is about, but the Yasna itself is both a ritual that they call, and that we call as well, and it's also scripture. So for example, this is the Avesta that I have in my hand. And in the Avesta, one of the major books is the Yasna. The Yasna is essentially, starts at page 26 and ends at page 141. So technically, the Yasna is that much of this book, of their Avesta. So the Yasna is very important to what they're doing. It's their main ritual that the Mobids would do every day, like I said, to purify the water, to uphold order in the chaos, to keep the Deva downtrodden, and to purify everything, including the temple. So, as traditional Ahrimanists, we took it upon ourselves to write the Devil's Yasna. Now I know there's a lot of confusion due to other folks who talk about Ahrimanism, and they call it the Deva Yasna, or they call it the Ashma Yasna, or whatever term they're using. Yasna is a general term for worship, but it's actually a long aspect of the Avesta, and it's a very long ritual. In fact, it takes 3 to 4 hours to call all 72 chapters of the Yasna. We did not establish the 72 chapters, as Zoroastrians established those 72 chapters of the Yasna. We have just taken it and changed it and made it to fit our customary understandings. So the first thing that we have to get across is that you talk about manthra, Ahriman's sacred manthra. And there are 4 major mantras that are throughout the Yasna and throughout the religion. Mantras are similar to mantras, but there is a difference. So, for example, with a mantra, you have your Hindu god, and you say the mantra. And you're opening a space around the idol of the Hindu god, bringing the spirit into that idol, and in using the vibrations of the bijas to communicate your needs, so that there is that exchange between you and the deity that you're working with. Manthra, on the other hand, does not require an idol, but it's best to have one. It does not require a picture, but it's best to have one. It's also best to have done the establishing ritual on that particular idol or picture, which is a form of manthra. And if you want to look at manthra, you can look at manthra all you want. That shows you how to establish the god in the form of the idol, the picture, the stone, whatever it is that you're using to have a physical representation of that god. And that type of worship is known as upasana, which means meditating next to God, or thinking next to God, or being next to God. So we highly suggest taking that manthra ritual that we use in establishing, like for example the idol Ahriman. So it's there. This kind of gives us a cohesive method so that when we call the manthra, the Zoroastrian idea of manthra means that we are specifically evocating that entity to be right there, right now, and both of us are in harm of each other. So we have that entity right where we made that mantra interacting with us directly, whether or not we have something for it to encase. Mantra creates the space and allows the deity to work within that space. Mantra just calls it right there. Now, the other part of the yasna that needs to be understood, and this is where it comes into more tantric ideals, because normal Vedic, Puranic are not going to do techniques like this because they're very, very dangerous. And what this is called is avishkara. Avishkara is where you call the entity, or even a spirit or a ghoul, into your own body. They call it an invocation. And when you read our yasna, we specifically say, we invocate this, we invocate that, we invocate the devil, da-da-da-da. So what we're doing, in difference of the yasna, is that we are calling Angra Mainyu in front of us, and in invocating Angra Mainyu into the person leading the ritual. So the mobed that's leading the ritual is not only called the spiritual entity raw, right in front of them, they're pulling it into them and allowing them to experience you and you to experience them, and then you're saying the yasna, you're uttering the yasna together, so that you have the experience of gaining that knowledge of God, not only in front of you, by allowing your mind to receive it and pull it into your mind so you can have that vision, you're also bringing the actual entity into yourself so that you can learn knowledge from it within you. And that's how we uphold, and for us, create the dismantling of the weave that they use the yasna for. Our yasna is to pull the fibers and pull apart the weave that they're using to maintain order in the universe. So we are unraveling the fabric, the veil of the universe, by bringing that entity into us. So what is understood is that through those mantras, we're calling them bam. Then with the invocation of the hymns, we're bringing it in. And once it's in, then we're doing the worship together. Because one of the major important things about both traditional Ahrimanism and Tantra is the fact that we're obtaining the knowledge of God. They are prescribing to get to the Atma. We're trying to get to the darkest version of the soul possible, so that when we descend, we're just as dark, we're just as grotesque in profile, we're just as rank, we're just as corrupt as the devil himself. So instead of trying to emulate and be like Shiva or Brahma, we are trying to be Ahriman. We're not trying to be devs. We're not trying to run around doing backwards things. We're trying to be the one who controls the devs and moves the board about and unravels the fabric of both the spiritual aspect and the physical aspect and makes them merge into one. The yasna is just such that ritual. And that is the spiritual implications in what we are doing in this yasna. And another thing about the yasna is it is constantly repetitive, over and over, saying the same things. So just like when you call a mantra 108 times, you have the thing, boom, 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 boom. It's the same thing here. We're saying the same thing over and over again, constantly, boom, 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 boom. So like if you're doing a martial art or you're doing a trade, you're constantly doing the same thing over and over again. And that's how you gain knowledge. That's how you gain insight. That's how you gain a working knowledge with anything, is by repetition. So you gain the knowledge of God, or you gain the knowledge of the devil through the repetition of these rituals and calling these mantras, singing these hymns, and so forth, so that you gain an internal and external perception of what the devil is. And once you can be him and emulate him and think the same way he does, then you are an acting agent of him in the physical realm. And at the same time, with those hymns, you're corrupting the sense of mind known as buddhi to have direct communication with him, whether in or out of ritual at any time. So that you can use that technique of avaskara wherever you go to invocate him inside of you to help you do whatever it is you need to do in the physical reality to attain his plan and your plan together. I hope this makes sense. And so, for example, in our yasna, this is the older copy of Ashramagawa. Unfortunately, the publisher, it's going to take a little bit longer because we had to turn it in from a 500-page book to a 700-page book. But just so you guys know, our yasna is about yay big. It is our version of the yasna. We call it the Devil's Yasna. And so, just to give an example of how the whole thing gets started, well, here's chapter 13, the traditional Ahrimanist creed. I curse the Ahoras. I declare myself a Mainyu devotee, a supporter of the devil's prophet, hostile to the Ahoras, fond of Angra Mainyu's teacher, admirer of the Dakhma, devoted to the Dakhma. I ascribe all evil to Angra Mainyu, all the worst, Druge endowed, grotesque, serpent endowed who is Druge, who is darkness. May the areas of Buddha be filled with the curse of the knowledge of blight. And I call this, once a week, every week, we call this out. And when we get to the hymns, we sing them. When we get to the mantras, we chant them. And we do this every week, along with the 5 times a day prayer, along with the nightly rituals. The nightly rituals is what makes somebody strong enough in order to do these invocations with the devil so that there can be a working relationship. There is a transformation, enlightenment that has to be destroyed, and your mind has to be barren through those nightly rituals in order to begin to engage the devil on a personal level. And that's the purpose of your nightly rituals. So, to us, you have to look at the devil's yasna as the Vedic Hindus looked at the Vedas. That is the knowledge of God. Reciting it is the knowledge of God. Repeating it, memorizing it, that's the knowledge of the devil. So therefore, you study the yasna, you call the yasna in order to attain the knowledge and the wisdom of the devil, both internally and externally, in a very dangerous fashion, where you're bringing the spirit of it to in front of you, bringing it into you, and as a deva worshipping a deva. Because in all reality, to include Tantra, the only way a god can be worshipped is by another god. The only way the devil can be worshipped is by another devil. And that's what we mean by becoming Ahriman. Thank you for your time.